So I recently found out about a Reddit thread where people are sharing their worst interview experiences and worst interview questions. People from all over the world and have opinions on things. So today we're gonna dive in. I'm a manager for 7 years now. I hired many people myself, so we will see if anything there will surprise me. Here's my laptop. Let's start with the weirdest interview questions. I read the first one, but the rest I kept as a surprise for myself. So let's go. A few years back, I was at second interview stage with a large retailer, and they asked me what my death row meal would be. I immediately instinctively replied steak and fries. I got the job and eventually asked them about it a few months later. Turns out they did not give a toss about my answer. They wanted to know how decisive I was. I don't know. I don't think that I would ask anything like that because, let's just think together for a second. What does this question tests? So you just kind of see how the person reacts to unusual, maybe a bizarre question from a person in a position of authority or like a position who represents the company, which I don't know what it actually tests. It's the same situation with stress interviews. In 99% of the cases where companies are doing the stress interviews, they're so not needed and sometimes they're very rude and very offensive, and yeah, I'm not a big fan. Mine wasn't an individual question per se, but based on an exam. I got called to go on to an interview. The first thing the interviewer says is, I can't hire you because you don't have any experience, but you scored so high on the test, I wanted to meet you. I paid to get this shirt dry cleaned. I feel for you. Oh my God, this is so offensive. It is so disrespectful towards the time of people you invite for the interview. Oh, this is bad through and through. You know, I actually noticed that in some companies, there is kind of a notion that because you invite people for an interview, you have a more powerful position, or it justifies for you being less respectful towards people. I bet if they would hire a top manager, they would treat them differently. Usually the common practice is, or should be, that even if in the end you reject the person, you want for this person to leave as an ambassador, let's say, of your company. You still want to leave a good impression and be respectful because, you never know. That is pretty bad. Interview question. Do you plan on having kids? From a panel interview? What? Wait, what? Wait. So first of all, is this legal? In many countries, it is actually illegal, right? To ask if you plan on having kids. I can bet that this person is a woman because no one asks men if they plan to have kids, right? Especially if it's on a panel interview. So panel interview, when you have multiple candidates and HR or a manager who sit in front of them. This is outrageous. This is most probably illegal in a lot of countries. I think where you on a panel interview, which even the concept of it is kind of feels to me a little bit shaky, but you also have an additional pressure because you have more people around you. It makes it even worse. I'm not sure what means that the officer in charge shut that one down real quick. And there is actually a comment, the top comment. We don't like to hire the young girls. They get married and leave too quick. Said it to me, a woman 25 at the time. 25 is still relatively young if you ask me. But that's not the point. This is a discriminative practice. I can speak about this for multiple hours, but in a nutshell, this is one of the reasons why in many countries, for example, they trying to reinforce even fathers to take a parental leave to get to a point where being away while you're having kids will be normalized for both men and women. So that's why companies would not have any incentive to do this discrimination towards young women, because it doesn't matter who would you hire, there is a risk that they will be having a parental leave at some point. Whether or not I had OCD. OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. What? I chuckled a bit because the question was so weird and illegal. Thank you. The hiring manager said, why would you laugh at such a terrible disease? Meanwhile, I'm and blurt out some nonsense about not having OCD, but that I'm organized. And her manager says, that's good because I can't work with people actually diagnosed with OCD, but I do like the OCD tendencies. What kind of twisted, bizarre logic is that? This was all in front of her staff of 7 people who somehow were unfazed. Oh, with the unfazed, with the poker face. Oh my God. Will it be the trend? Everything I read, I will be asking like, is this legal? But it's obviously illegal. And you know what I hate the most about this case is that manager first asked an appropriate question, then said, why would you laugh about such a terrible disease? Creating an impression that this manager takes it very seriously, but then saying something like, oh, that's good that you don't have it because I cannot work with people who are diagnosed with OCD. But can you imagine for a second that you're having it and you're at the interview? Hey, it's editing me here. I'm very sick, so it's only my voice. And here's the thing. If you are asked a health-related question on the interview, sometimes it can feel kind of justified. Like, what if you apply for a job where this particular thing is actually important? So let me explain you the rules here. And the first is before you got the job offer. On the interview, company should not ask you questions about your health, including your mental health. But there can be a few exceptions. Maybe they need to find out if you will actually be able to do the tasks that are required for the position, right? So for example, if you need to work on a construction site, they can ask if you have a fear of heights, or they can ask to make, I think, what is called reasonable adjustments to the interview process. So for example, if they send you the email before the interview, hey, please contact us if you are disabled and need any adjustments to the interview, this stuff is fine. Or sometimes companies actually need to hire people with disabilities. Like, for example, they have a project for people with type 1 diabetes, and they may want to have someone with type 1 diabetes to run this project. And also companies sometimes just check if they receive candidates from a diverse range of people in general. But the interesting part starts after they made you an offer. In many countries, after you got the offer, company actually can ask you about your health much more. And it's like a huge legal extravaganza, but the most important is this. They cannot withdraw the offer because of it, only if they find out that you're actually unable to perform the job. So in a nutshell, it's better not to lie about your health and learn your laws in your country about when you can refuse to answer these questions. Okay, do you know how to make tea? I was interviewing for a job at Cinnabon and I was 17. My interviewer said he never thought to ask it before until his previous hire couldn't do it. I was so dumbfounded, I could barely talk. I'm not sure about this one, because if you are interviewing for a role that is associated with making foods, it can be like it can be a legitimate question. I can understand why a person maybe felt offended because it's something that is a common sense and obvious for many, but I don't know, wouldn't be that disturbed by this one. I was at the interview, being interviewed by 3 people across a table from me, and the older lady in the middle literally said to me, I drove by your house and saw that you have a nice fenced yard. I know you are married. I assume you are going to want to have children. How long until you're probably going to get... This is bad. This is bad. And it is like, can you imagine how many women are facing that? None of the others stopped her or told her she couldn't ask such thing. I was thinking of this if I'm asked for my address when I apply for a job. Why does anyone need to know? I haven't thought about it actually. It is so creepy. So they asked for your address and she actually drove by and watched you, or like... This is so creepy. I understand why you would be cautious from that point on to give your home address to the companies. No judgment. After recently retirement from the military, I had a State Farm franchise owner ask me if I struggled with PTSD. Like, is this a thing? So, like, there is a trend here, right? This is a medical condition potentially, right? So, like, how you can... It is pretty bad on many levels. And also, you know what? Like, set aside the legal side of things. Just think for a second why companies ask things like that. For example, they would decide not to hire you if you have PTSD. Does it have anything to do with how qualified you are for the job? I don't think so. Okay, the guy asked what my biggest disappointment in life was. I didn't know how to answer. That ended up saying some work story that didn't really make sense. After the interview ended, I kind of got pissed off at the question. That's not a question you ask someone you're meeting someone for the first time. I'm glad I didn't get the job, because if that's inappropriate in the first meeting, imagine what it will be like working for him. This is an interesting one, because I would not consider a question as offensive, but it's definitely not the type of question that people regularly ask on the interview. And I always think, what type of information do you as a manager or maybe recruiter hope to derive from this answer? I wonder if it has anything to do with making judgment of if person is qualified enough for the job or not. My boss is a funny guy. He asked me what religion I was. What? Wait, what? Also, what country and ethnicity? He was genuinely curious, and I didn't realize at the time that it is illegal to ask that kind of question during the job interview. Hello, yeah? He asked one potential hire if he's ever done mushrooms, because the guy seems like a stoner. What? You look at someone, it triggers something in your mind that this person, in your opinion, may look like, in this case, look like a stoner. Rain never stops. So you make an assumption, you ask a question based on this, the guy said no, then my boss went on a long tangent about how he would take mushrooms and go sailing. Is he alright? If I try to think about this example in real life, of course, this is something that would be unthinkable in a big corporate. But the mushroom question, wait, what? So manager then went on explaining how he would want to try. So is this... It isn't professional, even if you're a small startup, even if you have a very open and informal culture. Once, while asked in an interview for sysadmin job, the guy asks me, what is your greatest weakness? I take a pause when I say seriously while pointing to my stomach, if you hit me here, I just fold. Got a good The question was okay. The weirdest one for me is that I was being interviewed for the Family Dollar, what is it? And it all went well until the manager looked over my schedule and kept asking, where's your other job? And demanding to know why I didn't tell her about my other job. The words, I am unemployed and have no other job, meant nothing to her, and she just kept freaking out till she asked me to leave. No idea what was that about. Huh? So she basically assumed that there is no way you don't have an other job and you're lying to her. I also had a subway not believe I was really an American. That was probably an illegal citizenship and job offer because of the last name. Not believing what you say, accusing you in making yourself an illegal citizenship, this is pretty screwed up. Alright, the rain is getting heavy, so let's move on to worst interview experiences.